Hi everyone, this is Dr. Scott. In this screencast today, I'm going to be talking about academic, credible, and popular sources and how to understand the difference between the three. When I'm trying to determine whether or not a source is academic or it's credible or it's a popular source, there's 6 issues that I'm typically looking at. The author, the publisher, the purpose, the audience, the language, and whether or not a text was reviewed and who it was reviewed by. So an author, I'm thinking about the background of the author and the publisher. I'm looking at their reputation. What are they connected to? Are they connected to a corporate publishing house, or are they connected to a university or a think tank or a governmental organization? Also looking at purpose. Are they there to, is the source out there to entertain, or is it there to persuade people? Is it there to try and get people to vote a particular way? Is the purpose of the source to add to a conversation that experts are having about a particular topic? Who's the audience? Is the audience very general and everybody can read the text, or is it an audience of other experts? Is the language very readable? Is it written for everybody, or is it a text that is more specialized? Does it have a lot of jargon and technical information and technical language? I'm also thinking about review. Was the text reviewed by an editor who was maybe looking at spelling and grammar and readability, or was the text reviewed by other experts who said that this is good research and we think that it adds something to a conversation we're having about a particular issue? So those are the 6 issues that I look at. What I'm going to do is break each one down a little bit and talk about some of the different questions and some of the issues that I'm thinking about when I'm looking at author, publisher, purpose, audience, language, and review. At the end, I'll kind of sum up what I think a scholarly or academic source, a credible source, and a popular source, what these 6 criteria look like for each of those kinds of sources. So when I'm thinking about author and whether or not the source is either academic, credible, or popular, I'm thinking about the author's educational background. Do they have training in this particular area? Are they trained journalists, which would tell me that's maybe a credible source, or maybe a popular source? Or are these somebody that have what's called a terminal field, like they have the highest education you have in a particular area? Or are they graduate students that are doing some research? What's the education background? What's the training that this person has? Also thinking about what else the writer has written. Has the writer written about this topic in the past? Are they known on this issue? What are the other things that they have written? Where does the author work? At a university, at a think tank, at a governmental organization, or does a person work at a publishing house, or they may be a journalist for the New York Times or another publication? Or maybe they're a hobbyist. Maybe they are working, they're thinking about this topic on the side and they're publishing on their own. What are the professional achievements or awards that the author has won? What is their title at where they work? What are the professional organizations or affiliations that the author might have? Again, are they affiliated with a university, with a think tank, with a governmental organization? What background do they have, or what affiliations do they have with different organizations? I'm also thinking about whether or not the author is unreasonably biased, and that is a huge issue recently. If an author is weighing evidence and is saying, based on the amount of evidence I have this opinion or this professional opinion about the topic, that's one thing. But if somebody's ignoring evidence that runs contrary to what they think, that's a problem. And it probably is a good indicator that this isn't an academic or even a credible source. So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about author. When it comes to publisher, I'm thinking about who published the article or book and what's that publisher's background. What's the kind of reputation that they have. And it's this kind of like looking up this information, particularly with publishing houses. Like I use Wikipedia for that. Like if I want to know, Pearson Publishing House, if I want to know what their reputation is, Wikipedia is awesome to help me understand a little bit of that. What kind of content do they typically publish? What affiliation does the publisher have? Are they connected to a university? Like Ohio State University has their own publishing house. I recently had an article published by the Utah State University State Press. Is the publisher affiliated with a governmental organization? Again, are they affiliated with a corporate publishing house that's out there to make money? Which isn't a bad thing, but it's typically, scholarly sources are not typically associated with corporate publishing houses. Taking a look at purpose. What is the purpose of the piece? Is it to inform people? Is it trying to get the word out about a particular issue? There are great books out there like Fast Food Nation and The Sixth Extinction, which is a great book if you haven't read it. Is it out there to try and inform people about a particular topic? Is it there to sell advertisements? Is it clickbait? Is it just trying to get people to click on a source to get ad revenue? Is it out there to persuade people? Is it to update people on a conversation that experts are having? Is the source out there to entertain? Typically, a source that is more popular is out there to try to entertain, sometimes to inform. Credible sources might persuade. They might also be trying to inform. But scholarly sources are usually out there to update experts about a particular conversation. They're trying to advance research. That's the purpose for a scholarly or academic source. I'm thinking about audience. I'm thinking about whether or not the audience is very general. Is it very vague? Is it people that are familiar about the topic? They might have a little bit of knowledge. I fish, so I get publications every once in a while that are about fishing. I'm somewhat familiar about different topics when it comes to fishing. I'm definitely no expert, but I have more than just kind of general knowledge, like people that don't know anything about fishing. So there's some publications out there that assume that their audience are going to know, that they're going to know something about a particular topic. Is it people who are interested and engaged on an issue? There's articles or the publications out there like The Atlantic, New Yorker. It assumes that people are educated and interested about particular issues. Is the source out there for voters to educate them on particular topics? Is it out there to get people fired up who already agree about an issue? Is it trying to walk across the aisle and try to persuade people who might be skeptical? Or is the audience a lot of experts in a particular discipline? I'm looking at language. Is it easy to understand by everybody? Is it language that assumes the reader has some familiarity or background on the topic? Does it have a lot of references to issues that the general public would not understand, but people that have some familiarity with the topic that they will understand? Or is the language really difficult to understand because it's filled with jargon and technical language that only other experts are going to be able to understand? Typically, an academic source is going to be a little bit more difficult to understand because it's written for other experts. I'm thinking about review. I'm thinking about whether the text received some review, or maybe it didn't receive any review at all. Sometimes blog posts, online forum comments, self-published articles, those aren't going to receive much of a review at all, if at all. We definitely wouldn't call those scholarly or academic sources. Was the article reviewed by an editor who made sure the text was readable to the audience? Journalistic, I'm thinking about journalism, and an article in the New York Times was reviewed by an editor who said, our audience is going to understand this. That doesn't make it necessarily a popular source. It also doesn't make it an academic source, because academic sources are typically reviewed by other experts in that discipline. So these are some of the questions that I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about review. So how to tell the difference between popular and academic. And so I'm thinking about popular as like the broadest audience, and academic is the most specialized audience that you can probably have for a source. Popular sources tend to be written by journalists, hobbyists, other non-experts. They're usually published by organizations that make money from their publications or the ads that they sell. Purpose of the popular source is sometimes to entertain, maybe to persuade. Audience is very broad. They're trying to get as broad a readership as possible. They assume that folks do not have in-depth knowledge about particular topics. Language is accessible to a general audience, may be reviewed by an editor who's looking for spelling, grammar, and syntax and things like that. And just to be clear, I'm not throwing any shade at popular sources. I think that they're great. I read trash web articles all the time, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be reading that stuff. I'm just saying that when it comes to this class and like putting together a documented argument later on in this term, you'll need to work with academic sources, because that's my expectation that you're going to have, that faculty in your major are going to have, that you know how to find academic sources for different issues, and that you're comfortable being able to find those sources and to weave them into your writing. So I'm thinking about academic sources. They tend to be written by experts on a topic. They're usually published by organizations or institutions like universities or professional organizations. They usually receive some support from those organizations or from subscribers. They're not selling ads. The purpose of an academic source is to advance a conversation on a topic. Language is usually specialized and technical. There's maybe a bit of jargon that only other experts may understand. The source is nearly always reviewed by peers who are also experts on that issue. So that's popular and academic. So popular is one end of the spectrum. Academic sources are on the other. Somewhere in the middle are credible sources. These are sources that might be thought of as a mix between popular and academic. It can be written by a journalist. Popular sources could also be written by a journalist, but if I'm thinking about a credible source written by a journalist, it's usually a journalist that knows quite a bit about an issue. There's a book called Dreamland that's about the opioid epidemic in our area. They write a fair bit about South Shore, Kentucky, and about Portsmouth specifically. It's written by a journalist named Sam Quinones. I think he's affiliated with the Los Angeles Times, but he's written quite a bit about the opioid epidemic and about the war on drugs. So I'd say that he's not necessarily an academic, and his source is not necessarily an academic source, but it's not necessarily a popular source either. I think that you make a case that it's a credible source, somebody that knows a fair bit about the issue, but is not necessarily an expert. Might be the publication might be a journalistic outlet like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Time, or Newsweek. These are publications that have decent reputations. The purpose of the article is usually to inform or educate readers. The audience is usually educated individuals that have an interest or some knowledge on the topic. So it's not an audience that's very vague and general and open to everybody. It's folks that know a little bit about the topic. Language can be a little difficult to follow, and it may assume that the readers know a fair bit about a topic. The source is usually reviewed by an editor who checks for accuracy. Other sources that you'll come across, like I've given you 3 categories, and not every source is going to fall within that. So there are other sources to kind of think about: governmental reports, statistics, polling data, literature. Shakespeare doesn't fall into any of those 3 sources. They may not be popular, credible, or academic, but they can be useful on a research project. We call these primary sources. You go out and do survey data, it's probably, I think I would call that a primary source. It's not necessarily credible, academic, or popular. It's a whole different kind of information altogether. So that is a bit of information about 3 different kinds of sources: academic, or sometimes what we call scholarly sources, credible sources, and then popular sources. So I hope hopefully you can determine the difference between these 3 different kinds of sources, and later on this term we're going to be working mostly with academic sources. All right, if you have any questions, I welcome them by email, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.